In 28 days, we're going to go to the polls and decide who's going to be the next president for the next 4 years. We had been working for decades to elect one of the most progressive candidates for president imaginable, and a Congress to help him pass his program. And in 2008, we elected President Barack Obama. Then 2010 came and pushback came. Governors in state after that election began rolling back collective bargaining rights. And make no mistake, my sisters and brothers, labor is under attack like never before. But this is not just an attack on the labor union movement. It's an attack on the poor. It's an attack on the middle class. It's an attack on women's rights. It's an attack on voting rights. It's an attack on immigrants' rights. It's an attack on gay rights. It's an attack on the rights of the disabled. It's an attack on the right to have a public education. It is an attack on our democracy. So let us learn the lesson of what happened on that election day in 2010. The lesson is elections matter. And not just the presidential elections. While 65% of the voters turned out for the recall election for Wisconsin governor, only 49% of those voters turned out in 2010. The 2010 elections what allowed the Republicans in Wisconsin to gain, and other governors to gain the powers of the governorship and control state legislatures in Congress. You see, the winners of elections get to decide who gets how much of 5 things. Who gets how much income, who gets how much health care, who gets how much education, who gets how much housing, and who gets how much justice. Why do you think that there are all these voter suppression schemes in these 15 to 30 states? They want to marginalize, minimalize, and criminalize our voters. They want to discount and miscount and undercount and don't count our voters. So let us learn the first lesson of the 2010 and get past all of those barriers that stand between us and the right to vote that we fought so hard to win. Because at least we don't have to answer questions like how many bubbles there are in a bar of soap, or guess how many jelly beans there are in a jar, or to pass a literacy test. There's a story about a black man in the early 60s who paid his poll tax, and he walked many miles to the county line just to register, or just to vote. He had registered. And when he got to the polls on election day, the poll worker said, well, I'll let you vote if you ask the one question. What does anti-disestablishmentarianism mean? And he looked up at the poll workers and said, I guess that means I won't be voting today. Now, it may be harder to vote. They may have constructed unnecessary barriers for voters to jump over. But mountains are made to either be climbed or moved. We're going to register people to vote, and we're going to vote anyhow. And so, we're going to re-elect President Barack Obama as President of the United States. And while most of the country is focused on the presidential battleground states of Colorado and Florida and Iowa and North Carolina and New Hampshire and Nevada and Ohio and Virginia and Wisconsin, and rightfully so, we must also hold the Senate, and we must also win the Congress if we're going to get past the partisan gridlock and advance our agenda. And in order to wrest the gavel away from the current speaker and take back the Congress, we need to win 25 congressional seats. And we've got 6 battleground congressional districts here in Illinois. And so a lot of y'all are going to get on the bus and go to Iowa, and Godspeed. And a lot of y'all are going to get on the bus and go to Wisconsin. Godspeed to you as well. But some of y'all should stay here in Illinois and get out the vote, not only here in Chicago, but in Peoria, and East St. Louis, and Waukegan, and Aurora, and Joliet, and Champaign, and Springfield, and Rock Island, and Belleville, because we need to rebuild a strong middle class. And we need to also build ladders of opportunity for those people who are poor trying to get into the middle class. And it doesn't happen by accident. It was built brick by brick by soldiers returning home from a war, and government who took seriously their obligation and provided them with the GI Bill and housing and education and jobs. It was built by American businesses that hired American workers and needed a well-educated workforce. And it was built by labor unions who gave us a 40-hour work week, an end to child labor, paid vacations, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and wages that were once the envy of the world. Good jobs are created when every working man and every working woman has a right to join together and bargain for a voice at work. Y'all ready for some good news?
Yeah.
The good news is that there are more Americans who share our values than don't. And the even better news is that when the other side's agenda is laid bare and we draw clear, bright lines and fight for what we believe in, our people will come out. You see, they can only win if they divide us. Black against white. Citizens against immigrants. Union workers versus non-union workers. Straight against gay. How cruel. How cynical. How divisive. Let us recommit ourselves to knitting that inescapable garment of destiny that Dr. King talked about. Well, what affects one of us affects all of us, because we're all a part of the same community, and we all pay a price whenever there's an injustice in that community. It is time we use our strength in numbers so that we can all share in the American dream. In America, your success should depend on your talent and your hard work and your contributions to your community. When did we start rewarding this pure, unadulterated greed? Let us all use all of the resources at our command and rebuild and restore and establish in America as a great nation, a country that works for all of us. It's time we go to work, putting America back to work. We all do better when we all do better.